Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. This is Washington, D.C. This is what lies behind the statement by Khamenei, the top Ayatollah of Iran, that the British, perfide Albion, have been massively interfering in Iran. This is demonstrable based on the public laws, of the United States, and then the British do it in a different way. But the U.S. profile couldn't be more clear. And indeed, you can get these congressmen to pop off. They'll tell you, they'll boast about how much they're interfering in Iran. Regime change. That's what they want. So there we go. And the hypocrisy is so intense that the entire rhetoric of human rights is completely discredited, because this is used in a very one-sided way to attack the enemies of imperialism. And, of course, when you get the human rights violations of a Saakashvili or whoever's ruling Uganda for the British or whatever that is, then there you get complete silence. So that bears watching, however. It is very, very dangerous to try to overthrow the government of a fairly substantial power like this, although we don't want to participate in this rhetoric that always creeps in, that Iran is some kind of superpower and so on. Iran is economically not in good shape. This, of course, another theme of hypocrisy. The same commentators on CNN who are telling you what a failure Ahmadinejad is in the economy they forget to remind you that there are economic sanctions demanded by the U.S. and the British that are strangling and crippling the Iranian economy. So you can't blame all of that on the regime. The other thing is, how might Iran strike back? I think you can see it. The obvious thing to do is to heat things up in Iraq, and here the United States will pay a price. The notion that the surge in Iraq ever worked is absurd. What worked was, it seems to me, some kind of dire threat delivered to Iran saying, you cool down Iraq or we will strike you. And the Iranians at that point, I think, said, well, fine, we'll cool down Iraq, and they have done so. But with this latest barrage, the U.S. has broken that commitment to the Iranians, who have now jacked up all kinds of bombings and all kinds of activities in Iraq. And that's just a hint of what they could do. If they ordered, again, the Mahdi army of Muqtada Sadr and other people to start cutting the U.S. supply lines, to start going wild with RPGs and machine guns along that route, Tampa, down there in southern Iraq, between Kuwait City and Baghdad, generally speaking, that could play hob, cause mayhem in the entire U.S. position. There's also a lot the Iranians can do in Afghanistan. Why get into this? The recrudescence, the upswing, the return of the Iraq War is definitely possible. This would be a huge, huge problem for the U.S. And at the same time in Afghanistan, that's already going about as badly as possible. So this kind of meddling, not a good idea, and geopolitically it's backfiring, because if Iran moves in friendship to the Russians, this is the worst of all possible outcomes from the point of view of the U.S. Imperialist mind-benders. Now, we've got some further economic statistics. According to the United Nations, there are now 1 billion people in the world who are hungry and in danger of starvation. Their food situation is extremely tenuous. 1 billion, 1/6 of humanity, approximately. What kind of commentary is that on the joys of globalization, as has been sold by all kinds of people, from Soros to the Clinton administration to the current Summers, Geithner, Bernanke crowd here in Washington? The U.S. unemployment is now 9.4% official, meaning 20 to 25% in reality. California, 11.5% unemployment. That seems to be the highest. Industrial unemployment, extremely high. U.S. industrial production continues to fall at a rate of about 1% per reporting period. The average still remains 500,000 jobs lost per month. We've also got, to sum it up, 10% of the U.S. population on food stamps. That's 33 million plus. Well, so it's more than 10%. And about 10% of all mortgages are now in arrears, meaning headed towards foreclosure if nothing else changes. Urgent intervention is needed. Don't tell those people about the free market. They will not be pleased, and so rightly so. Time to ban foreclosures. Time to gear up food stamps so people don't die. Stop talking about the Austrian school and the nanny state. Go tell some guy on a bread line about the horrors of the nanny state. He'll spit in your eye at the minimum. And remember also then that these unemployment benefits have also got to be kept up. But that's only in the interim before we can get a recovery going, because the duty of everybody is when you see a depression, you fight it. You don't roll over and say, oh, that's just the Austrian school business cycle working, and if we wait a while, it'll go away. Yeah, how many have to succumb and die and have their lives ruined in the meantime? So no to the Austrian school, but also no to Obama. Let's get to the no to Obama right now. In the Congress, in the House of Representatives today, we've got this monstrous cap-and-trade operation going on, and this deserves to be opposed. The idea here is that under the cover of the lunatic Al Gore theory of anthropogenic global warming, that is global warming created by human activity, a fraud. The guy's a charlatan. It's anti-scientific. It's irrationalism. It is a document of cultural pessimism and not of science. It's validated, of course, by a whole tribe of so-called climatologists. What kind of a specialty is that? Right? Are you a meteorologist? Are you an astronomer, a geologist, an oceanographer? No, I'm a climatologist, meaning I've got a fake specialization in a specialty which has been created deliberately and exclusively to parrot support for this Malthusian idea, which is, of course, the fruit of the British oligarchy and their minions in the U.S. This is typified by Prince Charles's personal domination over Al Gore, Prince Charles being the ego ideal of Al Gore. So the idea is that you will have the levels of carbon emissions. Carbon is CO2 and carbon in general identified as a pollutant, which it's not. It's actually quite necessary for the biosphere that we have, not a pollutant at all. That will be capped, and if you want to go beyond the caps, then you've got to trade these permits, these offsets. Now, what's going to happen with that? You can see it coming already. A speculative market, a speculative bubble in the carbon offsets will inevitably result. You can turn on CNBC or Fox Business News any day and see that the Wall Street gang thinks of nothing but the creation of new and bigger and better bubbles, even as their 1.5 quadrillion derivatives bubble collapses around their ears. They're trying to find new ways to start new bubbles. Now, we're seeing it, right? When we look at the London ICE exchange, right, the Intercontinental Exchange in London, we have followed on this program how during the summer of last year, 2008, Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley bid up the price of oil on that London ICE exchange to the point where if you were paying $5 a gallon for gasoline in the summer of 2008, as the price peaked, you were paying $1 just to Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley together. Now imagine what's going to happen when you've got to have these tradable, speculatable, and derivatable permits. You're going to have a huge speculative boom in those things, and that is going to be then a direct tax on production. Back in a minute.